Okay, I got something different today, and that is Amelie's story. And so you got a beautiful story, and you were just sharing it with me, and I had to interrupt you and say, let's just start recording that. And so a little while ago, you were in the underworld, in the depths and darkness of despair. Yeah?
Yeah, trapped on an island. Well, not trapped.
Tell us the story. How did it start? Did it start physically? Does it start nervous? Where does it? Where do you want to start this story?
The story builds from my birth. No, no, but it was like I lived for many decades with chronic illness, very complex chronic illness. But where we were in the story, I was actually stranded on an island called Russell Island, which I nicknamed Darrow Island at the time. For many reasons we can circle back to if you like. But yeah, so I was there and I was pretty much housebound, and I had chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and all the syndromes, POTS and everything. Like it was very challenging to leave the house. If I did, I'd get a migraine. And so yeah, I was basically trapped there, and my partner at the time, he would go to sea for like 5 weeks at a time. So I was very isolated. I didn't know anyone. I'd moved there out of necessity because they had new homes. And so, yeah, because my whole story starts from getting sick from mold and the exposure that then messed with my brain and every system in my body.
Can I ask whether, because you almost went to birth there, so we've got all those chronic patterns there.
Yeah.
And was there a backdrop of like PTSD and trauma or overwork or something like before the mold exposure, or were you just like skipping along when the mold came along?
No, so I was like, the reason I jokingly went to birth was because my birth was, I had the cord wrapped around my throat and like restricted blood flow to the brain, and grew up in a house that was over 200 years old, so it was moldy. So I like had been exposed to mold the whole time, and I'd always been a sick kid, like allergic to everything, hay fever, just like gut issues. I had what's it called, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, forever. Like I don't know what it is to be normal, and yeah, like autistic, ADHD, complex PTSD, long history of trauma. Like it was just life was hard.
Yes, so there's that neurodivergence and trauma as a backdrop that then you trace to being triggered and amplified by mold, and then resulting in a series of those alphabet diagnosis syndromes. You've collected more and more of them.
Collected so much.
That's right, because no one by itself could cover all of the different things on that reductive paradigm. Gotcha. And those big ones again are POTS. Did you say MCAS, mast cell?
Yep, mast cell. Chronic inflammatory response syndrome.
Yes.
I had chronic
fatigue.
Chronic fatigue.
IBS.
Yes. Chronic migraine for like daily for 16 years. What else did I have? Brain damage.
Okay.
There's
so a lot of those things. And that's like one of the reasons why it's so cool to hear you speak about this is ta-da! You're not in bed on an island.
I ran up a hill yesterday. I was like,
you just walked up a whole bunch of stairs to get here as well, right? So so the first piece is just like, because those things are often considered incurable.
Yes.
Right? They're considered incurable. You're just like, you're going to live with this for the rest of your life. And I know from a different journey, I haven't been sick my whole life. I've been neurodivergent my whole life with its own, it's had rippled through my body in different ways, but not to the same extent. But when I was cripplingly sick, it was only for 3 years, but I was bedridden. The sense of despair that this is never going away, that I will, now I'm broken. I'm broken like a glass. A vase, like I'm just cracked, I'm just damaged. And the paradigm there, the image is something inanimate. You know, like it's something inanimate, like a glass or a car or a watch that's broken. But actually, living systems, they respond completely different to that. And so the sense of being a broken watch, like if I take anything inanimate, like my water bottle, even better with a bit of glass, right? And I bang it here, every time I do that, it gets a little bit more fragile.
Yeah.
It gets worse and worse and worse until eventually it's going to smash, even gently. Whereas if I get my hand there and do that, martial artists do that, it actually gets stronger.
Yeah.
The bone density increases in that area. There's this anti-fragility piece and this responsiveness to living things. And so that sense of like, I'm broken like a vase, like forgets that inside the human body and the human psyche is always the capacity for regeneration, homeostasis, a return to regulation. Like we don't obey the normal rules of entropy and the laws of physics of decay. Like consciousness and life have the capacity to go in a different direction. Yeah. And you went in a different direction.
I did go in a very different direction. And now, like I spent a lot of my life learning how to accept that this would be my life, that misery was the normal. Yes. And I did. I actually came to accept that. But now my beliefs have completely changed and everything is healable. Absolutely everything. Yes. But back at this point in time, when I found myself stranded on this island, like I used to be a jeweler with my workshop was in Bangalore, just around the corner here, and I had lost that. I'd lost my identity. I'd lost my home. I'd lost all my possessions. Like I was stripped bare of everything that I had at one point found meaningful and important to me. Yes. And there I was, housebound and without any family or friends around me. And in the depths of the biggest despair of my life. And then discovered, brain damage and all these other things that I hadn't yet been aware of. Yes. And I was...
That must feel great off the back of all that illness. And you're like, on top of it, your brain is damaged. Your brain is a cracked pot as well.
Yeah. Well, I knew I was a cracked pot.
That's right. Exactly, right?
But it was actually like...
You even had POTS syndrome, didn't you?
Syndrome. Pothead, massive pothead.
Right.
Not many years, actually. But... It's funny, I was chatting with my parents the other day and saying how grateful I am for the brain damage because it led me to actually understanding what I could do about it. Yes. And absolute, massive transformation in beliefs and thought patterns and everything that allows me to sit here today and be speaking to you.
Well, when you describe that level of dark night of the soul and the despair, then a couple of years ago I finally got to go to Siberia and actually hang out with shamans, like people that use the word shaman. Yeah. Not that people from other countries aren't shamans, but these are the shamans that identify as shaman rather than nankari or something else, right? And they spoke repeatedly about shaman sickness. And shaman sickness is kind of like that thing that brings you to the absolute brink, that breaks you, that breaks you, that breaks you down, that breaks you open, that takes you beyond, right? Yeah. It's on top of that, as I understood it, some people are broken by that, but then there are some people that are, we might say neurodivergent or something in today's language, they have a calling or something like that, and then if they get that shaman sickness, they see it as an awakening, as a call, as an opportunity, and they are taken then, like we all know this story, I've heard it in New Age versions. I almost want to vomit in my own mouth because I sound like a New Age shaman right now. But I heard this from actual shamans in actual Siberia, right? So it's not. It sounds a bit like that thing, but it's not, right? And I know where this story is going, so that's why I'm using this bridge. And it's like, is that you came to that dark night and you had all of these things, all these going, and then you were in what I would call a crisis-unity.
Yes. I love that word. Oh, goosebumps all over. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that sense of crisis is profound, right? Yeah. The healing crisis lays at the core of the Western tradition. The Hippocratic tradition was all about crisis days and initiating crisis and how to create, I think it was Parmenides that said, give me the capacity to induce a fever and I can heal all the world. But really what he meant, give me the capacity to induce a crisis unity, right? And it's that like when it's how all change in complex systems, in complexity theory, in epochs, in species, in ecosystems, in regimes, is that you get more complexity, and then it's so much more finely tuned that then it starts to wobble. That's the crisis unity, and then whoosh, it comes to a phase shift to another level of complexity. But then it's more fine-tuned, so it's actually easier to go out of tune.
Yes.
But then it's going to go out of tune and wobble again. And then the only way for it to do is to go to a higher level of organization and complexity. And I would like to add consciousness inside there.
Yeah.
Because I think complexity and consciousness are intimately bound, right?
Absolutely.
And so that sense of like you were in this crisis unity, it was so dark, and some of the people listening to this at this point, who knows when and where that this is, like in the future, through these moments, hearing this little story here. That's right, they're going to hear this thing, and some of them are going to be in bed right now, in that dark night.
In the dark night,
And to hear from that, to hear people saying, like, we have both been through crisis, dark nights, you know, like hard times of, you know, like, I think yours is hard. I bow before
I
you.
win.
You win. You win the suffering Olympics. I do. I bow before your suffering. Absolutely. But still, you know, that deep crisis where you're like, I'm just going to be stuck here, right? And it's really, really sucks. And then on the other side, the rebirth. And that our classic mythologies from the West are not an ascensionist mythology of evolution through spiritual transcendence. It's always a descent into the underworld, a death and a rebirth and a re-emergence, right? The breakdown, breakthrough, that break open, the breaking, right? A descent into the under. It's a down. The way up is down.
It
always
is,
in the old myths. And it's Orpheus that goes down into the underworld, or it's Persephone that goes down into the underworld, whichever the hero is. They're torn limb from limb. Dionysus is torn limb from limb. Jesus is nailed to a cross. Like there's this pulling apart, like this breaking down of the old incomplete order, so that the pieces, Osiris, right? The pieces are put back together again, and something is reborn. And so, I mean, that happened.
It totally happened.
So tell us about with my lengthy interjection on the Shaman illness.
No, I
on the
really
other
love
side,
that. It's great.
Yes, you've landed in this a beautiful place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about your health. How's your health?
My health is the best it's ever been. So.
Go humanity.
Yes.
Go bodies and minds. Go nature.
Honestly, I couldn't think back to a time when I've had better health, and it's health of mind, body and soul. Like it's all interwoven. It's not just I've been able to heal these labels and things. No, it's actually just in a way a de-identification with all of these things. They just don't apply to me anymore. So I still experience the symptoms of the fallout from living for 38 years with complex chronic illness, of course.
Yes.
But life on this other side.
You're not just saying, I changed my perspective, my body is just as fragile and broken as it was before. No. You're saying that those conditions don't apply to you largely. There are remnants of things, like everyone has stuff, you know, like injuries or this or that. But you don't have IBS, you don't have POTS, you don't have MCAS or something like that. Is that right? Those things have changed significantly?
Those things have changed significantly. So like, to give you an example, I used to, like I had taken my health to a level where it was pretty good. And then, but I would still, you know, I'd have post-exertional malaise. So I'd go out into the world, I'd found the right, you know, mast cell stabilizers to help calm the over-inflammation and the reactions to everything. But I'd still, you know, if I walked too far, that put me in bed for 2 days.
Yes.
But then, was able to get rid of that. Like, that's not a thing anymore. Like I said the other day, I ran up a hill, went here, there, and everywhere, and just like energizer bunny. Like life is just completely different with energy. I had no idea because I'd never experienced that. So
Okay, so we've got physical healing.
Physical healing.
And,
you know, like I had a diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression, generalized anxiety disorder, complex PTSD, autism, ADHD, you know, all of that.
Off camera, you also mentioned being suicidal.
Yes, that was my common
Did you
state.
say you were a little bit suicidal? Is that how you described it?
No, at that point, it was super suicidal.
That's right. I knew it was one of those two. It was super suicidal.
And I'd been, you know, every level of suicidal that you can be.
Okay, so you know what a little bit suicidal is like.
Yeah.
And you weren't there.
No, I was, well, I don't know which way to put it, but
Yeah.
I was, anyway, I was extremely suicidal. And at this point in time that I was describing, I was, stranded on this island, very unwell, had lost everything and lost I just didn't see how I could go on, you know, like, but there was part of me that still wanted to. I wanted to figure out how.
Yes.
But the suicidal thoughts, the intrusive thoughts, like they were so busy, they were so there, and I didn't know how to think through them. And anyway, I was in a conversation with my parents, and they were like, "You are at risk to yourself," and I knew that, but and they said, "We think it's a really good idea if you go and admit yourself to a psych ward," which I'd done before. Horror stories, but anyway, so but I couldn't, because I was so reactive to mold, and often the psych wards are in the older parts of hospitals.
Okay.
And I knew that if I went in there and presented there and then no one believed me that mold was making me sick, like I could get stuck there forever. Yeah.
Paranoid delusion of mold sensitivity.
Exactly. Like I could foresee into the future that I'd be fucking locked up. That's me done. And there's no, there's no coming back from that. So I was like, actually, that's actually not the pathway for me to heal. So something in me knew that. And so I'm good at coming up with adaptive coping strategies. This is what my psych has said to me. Like, this is why I was undiagnosed autistic for 38 years, is because I learned how to adapt around me.
Okay.
And so it was never picked up because I'm like, just getting by, I'm okay, I'm all right. Like I can mask it.
Yes.
But only to a certain point, you know, you crumble under that. So I said to my parents, look, I will, they had said, you need to find a way to shift your energy at least once a week so that you come back up. And so I went, all right, well, I know I'm a chronic people pleaser. If I make the promise to someone else to show up, I'll show up. Mm-hmm. And I'll put on my mask no matter what state I'm in. And so I started inviting people into my nervous system practice, my like yoga and all the things that I was doing to try and heal. Mm. And so, that's how it started, that I became an accidental facilitator because I was trying to save my life. And so, it was just like one person would join up, or two people. And it was just,
And it was for you at that point.
It was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally just so that I showed up for myself.
Yes.
And put a mask on and did an hour of nervous system regulation and presentness and being with my body and shit, you know.
Yes.
Even though like I wasn't really, because I was putting on a mask, I was presenting, but it was enough connection and it was enough to elevate my state.
Yes.
And so that's how it started. And every week, I mean, I've cancelled maybe once or twice, I lost my voice a little while. But every week since then, for like 2.5 years, I've been doing these sessions, and now I do 3 a week.
Yes. And they're no longer just for you.
No longer just for me. They
Obviously,
save other people's lives.
you're getting benefit out of it as well.
Yeah.
But now that's where that shaman piece comes back around.
I found my purpose.
And now you are offering and sharing those techniques that helped get you out of that space. Yeah. And you're continuing what was that self-care process in that dark night. Yeah. And now you're sharing it with other people. Yeah. Right? And so there's this class where those techniques are happening, facilitated by somebody that has been all the way down.
All the way down to rock bottom. I lived at rock bottom for quite some time.
Yes, an underworld dweller. Yeah, someone that's like Persephone. Gone all the way down. And eaten the fruits of the underworld and been torn limb from limb like Osiris.
Reacted to the fruits of the underworld.
Yes. All of that business.
All of that.
Yeah. And so now, what are, can you describe, like, just at a top line, the kinds of things that you found so helpful? And you can use the descriptor of the modalities if you like, but also just the suchness of what they are. You know, centering and grounding and breathing, and you mentioned interoceptive practices and stuff.
Yeah.
So what's the ecology of practice? What's your ecology of practice that you evolved in that space?
Well, the interoception was actually at its core because I'd spent so many years trying to disconnect from all the pain in my body and override. You know, like I pushed through every day of my life with a migraine.
Yes.
And pushed through every day of my life with niggling pains and joint pain, and you know, like society teaches you to soldier on, and that's what I did, which is why I ended up so sick. And so actually stopping and coming back into presence with what was there and feeling the pain of the body and feeling the pain of my heart, feeling the pain of my mind, like actually just being with it. So that's a big, you know, at its core is just returning back to being with yourself and being held in that.
Feeling the feelings.
Yeah.
And going towards, not away from the pain. Like Rumi said, the solution to pain is in the pain.
Yes.
That the pain is an invitation. The pain is a medicine.
The pain is
the
the
pain
message.
is the path.
Yeah.
And you know, and the same the symptom.
Yeah.
The symptom, and like whether the symptom is the grief or whether the symptom is the inflammatory response or like a physical symptom or an emotional symptom, it's an angel calling.
Yeah.
A beckoning that when we cease trying to avoid and through terror, you know, and just like, oh no, I don't want to feel my skin bubbling or my heart breaking. Yeah. It's ironically when we go towards it, right? So you found that as a deep piece.
Yeah, like the best thing that ever happened to me was being stranded on that island and having to sit with my shit.
Yes.
And, you know, actually start listening to the messages of the body. Because, I honestly believe that the symptoms we have are the symptoms of our life, the symptoms of the way that we live or the people we interact with, the energies around us and the foods, of course, that we take in. Everything we absorb creates whatever's going on for you. And so if you're always running from yourself and you're always running from the world, you don't have time to listen. But my sessions essentially ask of you that you gift yourself that time to truly tune in and listen to what's there and learn how to decode your body's messages, because they're different for everyone, right?
Yes. And so you also spoke about interoception as well.
Yeah.
And so because everything we just said then could have been interpreted primarily through a psychological lens, and that's cool, and I think it applies at a psychological lens.
Of course, yeah.
But if I could lead us just into a somatic lens for a moment, I'm going to describe from my side how I understand interoception, and then you can fill out, disagree, build on that, and then how that goes in your practice. So interoception is a sense, like sight or smell or hearing. We don't have 5 of them. We've got like 20 or something. We've got a lot of senses. One of those senses that people learn is proprioception, which is just where the nerves in our body that tells us where we are in space. Like, you know, is my arm behind my head right now? That's proprioception, right? Interoception is just if suddenly I become aware of my right foot pressed against the floorboards. And the way in which my right knee is pressed behind my left knee. Or I can feel the wood underneath my left arm. I can extend my felt body awareness into my right ear, which was until that moment off my radar. And then I can send that felt body awareness into my guts, right? That's in a completely different sense to where I am in space. And it's consciousness, embodied consciousness, and it's the messages of the body that are taking place, that are constantly feeding back through our fascial system into the brain. And a lot of the time we screen it out because we don't want to feel. It's hard to concentrate on what someone's saying if you're getting messages from the way in which gravity is exerting its force upon your calf in this moment, or the slightly sticky feeling that I have underneath my arm against this fake leather chair. It's like, how can I concentrate on you? So interoceptive messages, like every other message, the brain is constantly screening them out.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly screening out a lot of things so we can focus on something else, right? And so that's my intro to interoception.
Yeah.
How would you build upon that from your, what is the language you use, or how do you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like you said it perfectly and described it, you know, went on a little experience of it even. And what I sort of discovered in all of my learning and uncovering is that society actually teaches us to override these, from a young age. Like, when I was young, I was really good at interoception. Like, I knew when I walked into a building that my nervous system didn't like that building, and I would chuck a tantrum, right? But the adults squash it.
Yes.
They teach it out of you, and it's socialized out. And so it's not uncommon for us to be so disconnected from the interoception skills. And what I noticed when I started really tuning in was that when I'm aware of how my nervous system responds to everything, like, it's a fine antenna. I can go through life being like, oh, I don't like that person's energy because I feel the contraction in my heart. Or I make decisions now based on my intuition, whether my heart expands or not. Like,
intuition could be interoception a bunch of the time. Well, it's like, no, it's like quite blurry. It's like, is it intuitive, or is it just like, no, I actually felt the muscles across my chest and the cardio muscles in that moment. It wasn't intuitive, it's interoceptive, potentially sometimes, right?
I kind of find that they're blending into the same.
Yes.
So the more in tune you are with the subtle changes in your body, those are the messages from your nervous system and from your heart and from every part of your being, from your intuition and from your consciousness. Like, nothing's in isolation. It's all interwoven. And so if you're missing this key component of actually being able to tune into your body, and you end up, with chronic illness, like, there's your answer. Yes. You're missing the language. You just need to learn the language of you.
And in the same way that someone can have a really high IQ and have a low EQ, someone can have a really high EQ and have a low interoceptive quotient. Yeah. Right? And they'll be profoundly disembodied, be very emotionally intelligent. Yeah. And be an interoceptive moron. An emotional genius and an interoceptive moron, right? Yeah. And you sound like an interoceptive genius, like either just naturally like you're born with a Vata constitution where all of that fascial antennae through your body have always been finely tuned, or also circumstances have forced upon you you like, this is the only way I can regulate myself, is I actually have to body scan and feel these parts.
Well, I think it's been different things at different times. So like I was saying, when I was younger, I would have been so finely tuned, but it was socialized out of me. Yes. And then I took on the conditioning of society to try and exist in society, which didn't work for me. And because of me blocking out that sense, ended up super sick. Yes. And so I actually had to relearn that. Yes. Because it did not come naturally. So anyone who's watching this going, oh, I don't know how to do that. It's okay, you can learn any skill. Yes. So I actually just started tuning into, like, I used to not notice if I had to pee. Like, that's how, you get in flow state when you're doing whatever you're doing, like, holy fuck, I need to go to the toilet right now. Yes. Like, whereas now I'm more in tune, sometimes. But and so, it can change. You can learn any skill, like, everything can change.
And then when that interoceptive channel opens, right, where just through practice, if I would say, feel your left nostril, like, can you? Is it closed or can you feel it? And the answer might be, I can't, first off, and that's okay. Like, and then you could sit with it for a little while until you can. It's easy if it would be like left pinky finger or right pinky finger. Yeah. But when you do that and you open that interoceptive channel, then it's not just a nervous innovation that takes place, like innovation by the nervous system, but because the nervous system is not in isolation from the cardiovascular system or any other system, then you've got vasodilation that's going to follow with interoceptive awareness. And that comes down to something like where intention goes, chi flows.
Yeah.
And where chi flows, blood goes. And where blood goes, healing happens.
Yes.
You know, like it comes back to like, it's such a profound, like the body scanning interoceptive process, which is obviously one of the tools that you use, but not all of them.
Yeah.
How we can put some language around it that might help people to be able to approach how efficacious and profound it is to direct attention to those areas, right? Yeah, but then here's the other thing. At times, it's about closing down interoceptive gates because people can open them up too much and it's just like, oh, how's my back? How's my back?
Yeah.
I think I felt a twinge.
Yeah.
And so, like, studies into back pain have, because the slip disc hypothesis is blown out of the water, interoceptive models are really, really big around all this other stuff now. There's been a lot of research just over the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. At times, it's just like and same with IBS, like it's like intestinal discomfort or I need to pee. I'm so interoceptively in tune that I can sense 25 millimeters of urine in my bladder. And then that's not helpful.
No.
That'll mess you up. And the same, just like it's just like, how do I feel in my guts right now? You don't want to feel everything that's happening in your intestines all the time. Because it's gurgly and flatulent and acidy and weird. Yeah. It's like if you feel it all, it's like an acid trip, right? Thankfully, we don't feel everything that's happening in our body at all times. Otherwise, that is what happens on some acid trips. It's really overwhelming. So the interoceptive process can act, although often and mostly there's an opening of that. Yeah. There are times when it needs to be moved from my back and my gut towards my scalp, you know, my sex, my chest, my skin, my lungs, you know, channeled somewhere else from my bladder. What's my bladder doing? What's my bladder doing? Where's my bladder at? Yeah. You know, so it's interoceptive, the gates of perception and sensory gating channels, the technicalities of that, can be too opened in some areas and too closed in other areas as well.
And this is like a key thing to my healing is, bringing it all together in a way that serves you. Yes. And so understanding about the nervous system, but also, you know, like I was saying before, the gift of my brain damage showing me where to look, because my amygdala was shrunken from long-term limbic overactivation. Okay. And so the neural rewiring came into it in this way, and this is why...
It's often the opposite that happens in PTSD, is you get a heavier amygdala.
Yeah, well, for me, it shrank right down and had so much neuroinflammation that there's areas of my brain that don't receive oxygen and blood. I actually have to take stimulant medication to be able to switch my brain on. Wow. For now, it's healing. Everything's healing. Yes. But yeah, so this is why I design my sessions the way that I do. It's about tuning into what's there, but also reminding the subconscious mind that you get to choose where you put your focus. So we do, in my sessions, about 20 minutes of a guided meditation that takes people on a journey into whatever they choose to focus on. And it's one of the best healing things. It's the part that you can do even if you are bedbound that you'll gain benefit from, because it's reminding your subconscious mind that you have the power. So whilst it's finding that perfect balance, that, you know, body-mind attunement, that is really key for healing. It's not, you can't just do nervous system work. You've got to look at the thought patterns that hold you in place of the anxiety of, what does that mean? What is that, you know, what is that doing for me? Because I was in absolute symptom loop. So when I flew into this house, this brand new home that had no mold, it took me months to let myself feel safe. I did not feel safe because of all the trauma. I'd been on this mold avoidance adventure from hell across the country. And so I had to really work hard to deliver the message of safety to the cells in my body, to the beliefs in my brain. Yes. I was Very,
that lack of safety is going to get those mast cells as well, just to alarm
That's
and
it.
dump
Yeah.
again and again and again,
Yeah.
and then the symptoms will be very, very real.
Yeah.
It's not actually just all in your head.
Yeah.
It's all in your nervous system. Perhaps is a better.
Yes.
But then it's no longer all in your nervous system.
No,
it's
it's just
everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
and your confirmation bias is always working. So if you're trying to, you know, assess your symptoms all the time for what does this mean, is this dangerous, then your brain's going to be confirming that it is. And
Yes.
so you get stuck in these loops
Yes.
that keep you there. So, you know, like they say, it's like it's all in your head. Well, I mean, that's bullshit. It's not all in your head, but also, yeah, it kind of is.
Yes. Or your head is not helping.
Yeah.
It's
your
putting
thought
fuel on the
pathways.
fire.
Yeah.
You're just keeping that pattern, like a panic
Yeah.
attack, and then
Exactly.
you freak out about freaking out more.
Exactly.
It becomes a bad trip.
Yeah.
And it's not on your head. The physical symptoms are very, very,
Very
very real.
real. Yeah.
It's just that your mind is
amplifying
it that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So listening to all of this sort of stuff, then I have to say those classes that you're talking about, they sound inaccessible and expensive.
They're free!
That was a little obvious one. I set it up for you and knock it out of the park. Yes, I knew where that was going. It was a cheap trick. It was a cheap trick, Jimmy. That's on me. Yeah, and so people can actually dial in from like a hospital bed, literally.
Anywhere.
From a hospital bed or a psych ward or from home or a
Yeah.
nursing home or anywhere.
Anyway.
Do they have to be bedridden?
No.
Can they move if will you
you're
let
on a
someone in
yacht,
if
like-
they can move their arms and limbs?
Yeah.
Will you allow them into your class?
Everyone is welcome.
Yes.
Absolutely everyone.
Can they pay you a donation?
If they would love to,
That's
I
right.
love that.
Yeah, gotcha. But that's you're
Look,
here
there's no
still just
requirement.
walking your path and sharing your gift.
Yeah, because like for me, I feel that the people who go to the darkest depths are the ones that are going on a journey to unlock the brightest light
Yes.
within. And it's my duty as someone who's been there to help. And I really feel like no one should get left behind. So I really want this to remain an accessible space for
Yes.
everyone to be able to come. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. What an incredible. I'm not sure. Can anyone actually see? Look at that. You can't fake goosebumps. Can you now? There it is. What a beautiful story. What a
Yeah.
beautiful story. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining me here today.
You're so welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks
all right.
for having me here.
And I'm going to put the link in some way
Yeah.
so they can find you about
Amazing.
this piece here.
Yeah.
Go and join up with it. Thank
Yeah,
you, Emily.
thank you.
Take care.